evening, and welcome to Horror Historian. My name is Amanda, and tonight we will be discussing the 2008 monster mystery movie, The Midnight Meat Train. This movie is based on a short story written by Clive Barker. It was part of his Books of Blood anthology series, and I have read it, so I will discuss a little bit about some of the differences between the movie and the short story. This movie was directed by the Japanese director Ryuhei Kitamura. I haven't seen any of his other work, but it seems as though he does like a lot of manga adaptations, as well as directing one Godzilla movie. I would love to see some of these movies though, so he won me over there. He also directed the cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. The stars are Bradley Cooper, Leslie Bibb, Brooke Shields, and Vinnie Jones, with an honorable mention to horror great Ted Raimi. Bradley Cooper is Bradley Cooper. If you don't know who he is, then where the hell have you been? He's been nominated for like a dozen Oscars and has also made people cry over a raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. Leslie Bibb is most known for the Iron Man franchise, Jupiter's Legacy, and she's about to be on the next season of White Lotus, which is still a show I need to watch. Brooke Shields is Brooke Shields. I have honestly no idea who contacted her for this movie. She's been in a bunch of Law & Order SVU episodes. She's most known for Alice Sweet Alice, The Blue Lagoon, and Suddenly Susan. Vinnie Jones is a former professional soccer player who did a great job moving to acting. He played Juggernaut in the X-Men live-action franchise, which I had no idea about, and he was insanely entertaining on the X Factor UK. Trigger warning for sexual violence. The movie begins with a man waking up from a little nap on the subway, which normally wouldn't be a big deal except there is blood absolutely everywhere, and then a large bald man hits him with precision. Leon Kaufman is a edgy photographer living in New York City. He enjoys taking photographs at the gritty realism of the city, which has never been done before, ever. I don't think that he has any other job. His girlfriend, Maya, somehow manages to get him a meeting with a gallery owner named Susan Hoff. I say somehow because I think she's a waitress at a small diner, so I don't know how they came across one another. Anyway, he hopes it's going to be his big break, but instead, Susan Hoff gives him the feedback that he is not going far enough and gives him encouragement to go even further with his work, which leads him to go into the subway station late at night, and he sees a woman being sexually harassed on the stairs, and instead of stopping it from happening immediately, it takes a couple seconds to photograph what is happening. That is the gritty realness that he was looking for. He also just happens to be exploiting a woman that is in real danger to do so. He does eventually get the attention of the men that are harassing her, basically threatening them with the photographs he had just taken of them, and for some reason the girl kisses him before running to catch the train. She gets on and Leon catches a glimpse of someone on the train with her. That man, as we will come to know him, is Mahogany, and he is a butcher. Both a butcher on the train and one as an occupation. He is a very large man and physically intimidating, to say the least. He hits the woman once and she is done, ready to be turned into meat for something we don't know yet. The following day, Leon is looking at the newspaper when he sees a picture of the woman that he saved, and it is notifying people that she is missing. She is actually a fairly famous model. He goes to the police and tries to tell them what happened at the station, showing them pictures, but the detective that he talks to doesn't seem really interested in what he has to say. Leon has a lot of questions, and no one seems interested in looking to what he saw. But there's more than curiosity driving him at this point, because Susan loves the photographs that he brings her. They're real, and they're taking that extra step that she had been pushing him for. Our first real midnight meat massacre happens in the next scene. Three business people are on the train and having a normal conversation when one of them ends up with a cleaver to the face. Mahogany just absolutely annihilates this group. It just so happens that Leon is lurking outside the subway station that Mahogany is coming up. He recognizes him from that brief moment, and there's no nice way to say this, but Leon starts to stalk Mahogany. He finds out that he works in a meatpacking factory that is on the subway line. This leads him to a very dark rabbit hole. We get another midnight meat massacre when there is a drunk guy on the train with Mahogany, and he's a little bigger than the other people that we'd seen. He notices that the train isn't going quite the right way and brings it up, right before Mahogany starts to fight him. And to this guy's credit, he puts up a really solid fight. He puts up such a good fight, in fact, that someone else needs to step in. The conductor of the train arrives and just shoots the man in the back of the head, with the bullet exiting through the eye. It's a pretty gruesome scene and very appreciated. But it also lets us know that this is a much deeper thing than just like this one guy killing people. We've seen the bloodbath that is created when Mahogany kills, so it makes perfect sense that whoever is running the train is aware of what's going on. Or, at least, there's going to be a lot of panicking with how often people are disappearing from the line. We're not going to find out how deep it goes quite yet, though. The conductor turns to Mahogany and expresses his disappointment in him. He's not as good as he once was, and this never would have happened before. We follow Mahogany for a while as he goes to his apartment and starts removing something from his skin. My immediate thought was that they were like tumors. It's never actually addressed, although he keeps everything that he clips off himself in a little box. I so badly wish we got more information about this. Like, is this why his performances dropped? Is it a consequence of working with the beings that we will discuss later? Nothing, and it's not in the book either. The next day, which isn't a book, it's a short story. Let me clarify that. The next day, Leon decides it's a great genius idea to go into the meatpacking plant and follow Mahogany in a much closer way. That seems like a wildly stupid idea to follow a man that you suspect of murdering a bunch of people into a place where there are a lot of tools available for cutting up bodies, but he wants information and to take some photos. I'm not really sure if these are just like really big pigs or like cows, but there's a lot of running around these like bodies, especially since it doesn't take long for Mahogany to notice that he is sneaking around, especially since he is doing so with a rather large camera. From this moment on, everyone in Leon's life is going to be extremely concerned about him. He becomes beyond obsessed as he tries to get to the bottom of this mystery, a mystery that is much bigger than just a few missing people over the years. It turns out that this might have been going on for at least 100 years. Many, many deaths connected to that meatpacking plant. He even ends up with a crazy board of missing people. At this point, you might be thinking that Mahogany is some ancient being that kills people, which is absolutely what I thought was going on. 100 years is a long time to be killing people on a train line, and there's still not much of a hint as to why they are doing this. So, Maya is getting more and more concerned about Leon, and he is not doing himself any favors. He has not been subtle, and we see Mahogany watching him from outside the restaurant while Leon chows down on some meat. Considering that he was a vegetarian? One of them. At the beginning of this movie, this is a concerning development. This book does not have him as a vegetarian, so this is really not touched on at all. It's just an idea thrown out there, and just there it is. Why is he eating meat now? Who knows? Leon has decided that he is going to follow Mahogany on to his last train of the night. He's a car behind the one that Mahogany is in, and there's actually this kind of tense moment where these two teens are selling candy bars, and Mahogany starts reaching into his pocket, and we've kind of been trained at this point to think that he's going to pull a weapon out. Instead, he just buys some candy. It's a super tense scene where you really think that Mahogany is going to go crazy right then and there. But it's not time yet, and Mahogany is a killing machine, although he is not mindless. He's going to wait until it's a little bit more cleared out than this. It's a little later on the midnight train that Mahogany begins the slaughter. Leon is hiding in the train behind where Mahogany is killing people, taking quiet photos as best that he can. But he does get caught because Mahogany is aware that he is being followed as of late. There's a small fight between them where Mahogany easily gets the upper hand and knocks Leon out. That's when we finally figure out this is all about. Mahogany is not some kind of ancient being, but his occupation as a butcher has a lot to do with everything. At the very end of the line, on the last train that runs, are monsters. They're vaguely like reptile-like, and they are being fed these bodies. Leon blacks out at this point, and awakes sometime later in the meatpacking factory. A symbol has been carved onto his skin, which obviously freaks him out. Leon really needs Maya to get on board with him about everything. And he ends up spilling all that he knows. And if I was like wandering in on this conversation at this point, I would just think he's absolutely insane. And that's kind of what Maya is doing. She is extremely concerned about him, and she ends up becoming a little afraid of him because of how manic he is about this. This is where Maya gets a lot more involved with the story. She meets up with their friend Jerkis, who is played by Roger Bart from a bunch of Broadway stuff as well as Hostel 2. Mahogany had taken Leon's camera, and Maya and Jerkis decide that they're going to go get it, which involves Mahogany once again being stalked, but this time he isn't paying as much attention to them. They break into the apartment and look around. Jerkis ends up being caught by Mahogany, but Maya manages to get a book that Mahogany is always carrying around. It ends up being a timetable going back 100 years. Jerkis is taken, and Maya goes to the police, the same Detective Hadley that Leon had tried to talk to earlier in the movie. Detective Hadley tells her to go on the last train to meet with Mahogany to give him the book back, that he won't press charges if she does that. So she gets on the last train. Through this time, Leon has been at an art show. It's doing really well, but he wants to finish off Mahogany once and for all. He goes into the meatpacking plant and grabs some weapons for his final confrontation with Mahogany. It's pretty good timing. Leon arrives right in time for Mahogany to have Maya cornered, the midnight meat massacre having already started. Maya had found Jurgis, who was not quite dead while being hung up like that. It's a pretty brutal battle between these bodies. That was a tongue twister I gave myself, as each of them try to get the upper hand. The train reaches the end of the line where you get to see all the leftovers the monsters don't devour. Leon finally gets the upper hand and uses a broken bone to stab Mahogany in the throat. It's at this point that the butcher says, "Welcome," the first time that he's spoken this entire movie. The conductor arrives and holds Leon up, ripping his tongue out and eating it raw, right then and there. He then lets Leon know that Maya is there, unconscious and laying in the rubble. There's not much time to think because the conductor kills her and rips her heart out, leaving her to be eaten by the monsters. Detective Hadley is seen giving the timetable over to someone who ends up being Leon. He is the new Mahogany, albeit a much quieter one than the one before, mostly because I'm pretty sure that guy at least still had a tongue, because he did say welcome. The book is a little bit different, and it goes into detail of like certain things that the movie just skips over. The movie is pretty much like there are monsters that deal with that how you will. Because it's Clive Barker, though, it gets into a little bit more detail, and it's big time horror. This time around, Leon is just an office worker living in New York City. He falls asleep on the subway and wakes up to find Mahogany killing people with the assistance from the conductor. It's an amazing feat of self-preservation. Leon manages to kill Mahogany, and the conductor explains the situation they has ended up in. The monsters are the City Fathers. They are the ones that run New York and have been since the very beginning. In the book, they look like people, just like ancient people. Like, in my mind, I was thinking Withers from Baldur's Gate. Leon is told all this information and then he passes out. When you wake up, he's in a completely clean area. Those that work at the station look at him with respect, and he knows that he has a lot to learn before beginning his shift that night. It's a decent story, but obviously needed a lot of padding to make it a full-length feature film. It's a shame that they didn't include the actual story of the monsters, instead leaving it kind of like, we're making sure the monsters don't eat the people in the subways by feeding them people in the subways. I don't know. Going into the movie blind, I can imagine that it's a pretty big shock when the monsters are revealed. It was, to me, the first time I saw it, and I almost gave up on it because I was like, I don't really like monster movies. But it's a good slasher. Like, there's still slasher elements, there's still monster elements, kind of a combination of both. I'm really glad I stuck through it, though. It's fun. It's a nice little movie. Overall, this movie is pretty decent. If you can get over it suddenly being a creature feature, you're going to have a good time. Vinnie Jones does a fantastic job of just being this imposing figure that seems almost impossible for Bradley Cooper to take down, which is hilarious considering they're both listed as being 6'1". The acting is good, the deaths are pretty damn good. I'm still really impressed by the guy that got shot by the conductor. It was just kind of like, that scene was just kind of a surprise and entertaining. I'm glad that they expanded from the original story, even if I wish there had been a little bit more lore inclusion. My mom is a big fan of this movie, though, so shout out to her.